Spend the time to do good around you, to be happy when the hearts are delighted. There is nothing on earth, on the complete planet, nor in this universe, that makes him so happy. When too sad, some are hiding their eyes. Come like a sun to rebirth their faith. It's within yourself, it's within myself. On the highest firmament that gives back wings. Offer your life to the infinity, to the love and to God. It's to be always happy. There's nothing on earth, on the complete planet, nor in this universe, that makes him so happy. Offer your life with a light heart to the infinity, to the spirit that is free. It's beyond ourselves, probably beyond everything, a divine mystery within the confines of the light.
Spirit Garden. The Foundations of Knowledge. Welcome. If you are listening to this video, it is perhaps because you feel a call, the call to join a place of study, transformation, and shared life, the Spirit Garden. In this video, you will discover an essential excerpt from our work, the beginning of a foundational work titled The Foundations of Knowledge. This is the first text that everyone reads, either partially or in full, depending on the position they choose in our school, volunteer, student, or member. This text is usually studied with the guidance of a teacher, as some sections are technical, dense, or contain concepts drawn from deep psychology, particularly the work of Carl Jung. In this video, you will hear it read aloud, sometimes at a brisk pace, with terms that are not explained in detail. This is intentional. The aim here is not to understand everything at once, but to perceive the direction, the climate of consciousness, and the depth of the project. If certain sections seem difficult, know that this is normal. Listen carefully, let it resonate, and note the key points. If you are torn between two possible positions in our school, or if a question is blocking your understanding, feel free to contact us. You can leave your question in the comments, and we will respond with clarity so that it benefits other listeners as well. Our intention is simple: to help you better understand who we are, how we function, and whether your place might be among us. We wish you a good listening experience, full presence, and sincere curiosity. Thank you for your attention. Spirit Garden.
Prologue. The Invisible School. There are places that are not meant to exist in the noise of the world. Places that are discreet, almost secret, and open only to those who come with sincerity. The Spirit Garden is one of them. It is not an ashram, nor a school in the traditional sense. It is not a place of spiritual consumption. It is a living space, a field of consciousness, a refuge for free souls. There are 3 doors to enter: the door of volunteering, the door of study, the door of deep commitment as a member. This book introduces you to the foundations of this place, its rules, its rhythms, and its paths of evolution. Read it not as a set of rules, but as an invitation to understand the music of the place. Chapter 1. Volunteers. Welcome, traveler, with an open hand and an open heart. You have arrived at the Spirit Garden, a place of harmony, service, and transformation. You are welcomed here as a volunteer, and this word carries a clear vibration. You are here to offer your help, and in return, to experience a timeless moment, sharing quietly with those who study here in depth. On your first day after your arrival, you are invited to listen to this message in peace, perhaps sitting under a tree or swayed by the peaceful light of the place, starting at 10:30 a.m. Once you have heard this message, we will ask you to start your first workday around 11 a.m. for a duration of 5 hours, until 4:30 p.m. with a free half-hour break for you to eat, breathe, and contemplate. After that, the rest of your day is entirely free. If, in the evening or at any other time, an organized activity attracts you, a singing circle, a class, a guided meditation, You are free to participate by paying the proposed fee, as you are not here as a student, but as a temporary support. On subsequent days, your work schedule will follow this harmony, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. first phase, followed by a half-hour break and resuming until 13:30 p.m. The rest of the day is yours to rest, swim, meditate, contemplate, or read. The Spirit Garden hosts 2 distinct aquatic areas, a textile pool for those who keep their swimwear on, a nudist pool with a jacuzzi, strictly reserved for those who have chosen this lifestyle with respect. Access is prohibited to anyone in swimwear, as beyond the activities offered, some residents come simply to relax and meditate, and they must be able to do so without feeling watched or disturbed. In this space, students are in a special position. They have committed to deep inner work, sometimes intense, and you are kindly asked not to interfere with their process. This means no unnecessary exchanges, no philosophical or spiritual debates, no intention to teach or convince. Let's maintain a friendly, respectful yet distant relationship in trust and silence if necessary. We thank you for respecting this subtle atmosphere. Your presence is valuable as long as there is work to be done. Once this work is completed, if we no longer have tasks to offer you, we will respectfully ask you to leave. This does not mean we do not appreciate you. Simply, the Spirit Garden is a place of passage for volunteers, a living place that follows the needs of the moment. You are committed to 25 hours of work per week, spread over 5 days, with 2 days off during which you can freely access the aquatic areas suited to your lifestyle, textile or nudist, and possibly participate in activities if you wish by paying their cost. If we can assist you with transportation or drop you off somewhere when you leave, and if we are available, we will do so gladly and respectfully. Now, let's speak a word about the living environment of our center. Here, alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, violence, and any form of meat or fish are strictly prohibited. Vegetarianism is tolerated, but veganism is the norm. These rules are non-negotiable. In case of non-compliance, immediate removal will occur in order to preserve the pure atmosphere we have carefully cultivated. We also ask that you inform us upon your arrival if you have any food allergies, special needs, or specific limits, so that we can adapt with care. The Spirit Garden is a fragile haven built with patience. It seeks neither to convince nor to convert. It offers a framework, a vibration, a balance. You are free to enter, free to stay, free to leave, but as long as you are here, we ask that you respect its foundations with the same attention that we respect you as a human being. Thank you for your presence, your help, and your open heart. We wish you a beautiful stay with us. May the earth support you, may the sky inspire you, and may this passage, even brief, leave a bright imprint on you. Chapter 2. Students. Welcome, sincere seeker and traveler of the inner world. You have crossed a threshold, not just that of a place, but that of a path of study. Here begins an inner adventure, a commitment to self-knowledge, accompanied by exercises, silences, sharing, and sometimes challenges. You are now a student at the Spirit Garden, and as such you enter a special circle with its own rhythms, rules, and blessings. First of all, you are, of course, subject to the same rules as the volunteers, which you have heard previously. Respect for the place, its simple and clear laws, respect for every living being, every silence, every space. In addition to that, you have a dimension of study and deep transformation. As a student, all classes are offered to you free of charge, and in return, you are invited to give 4 hours of work per day to balance the energy you receive. This work does not pay for your classes, as they are priceless, but it supports the community that welcomes and nourishes you. Here is the rhythm that will guide you. Every morning, classes start at 10:30 a.m. and usually end around 1 p.m. Sometimes earlier. sometimes later. After a rest, you resume at 4 p.m. for your service time, which lasts until 8 p.m. when we may gather to share a meal if circumstances permit. This rhythm is flexible but structured. It invites engagement without tension, joyful discipline, and presence to oneself in both effort and reception. Beyond the traditional classes, physical, intellectual, sensory, you will also have access to private and optional activities with Master Oji Hanshi. For those who wish to go further, the test of the 3 plans, hypnosis sessions on deep memories and past lives, energy experiences with the Nen Equi machine, and other more intimate encounters, always respecting your rhythm and your choice. Apart from the regular lessons, none of this is mandatory. You are free to move forward in your own way, but what is offered here deserves to be received with a sincere heart and a student's posture. Your evolution within the school will be marked by a series of learning levels called Q, a Japanese word meaning step or level. For each new Q you achieve, you will also receive a small symbolic amount of money, a recognition, and encouragement. But know that time is limited for the first degrees. You have 1 month to pass your next Q. If not, you will not be dismissed, but you will move to the volunteer group to continue your learning in a different way, perhaps with more humility or maturity. When you are ready, you can return among the students. As the path is never closed, it is simply alive. For higher Kaios, the allotted time is longer because the teachings are denser, deeper, and require greater integration. Your first lessons will begin with an introduction to a third possible position in the school, beyond the role of volunteer or student, and the study of a fundamental first text which will open you to the specifics of the pedagogy practiced here. A living, relational, symbolic, and inner pedagogy. We wish for you to experience this stay as a rite of passage. May each word received nourish you, may each gesture made refine your attention, and may this school, much more than a place, become for you a mirror of consciousness. Welcome, not to consume knowledge, but to discover yourself in the mirror of reality. Respect and you will be respected. Give yourself to the path and the path will open. Chapter 3. The main areas of study at the Spirit Garden. Studying here at the Spirit Garden is not just about learning with the mind. It is about diving into a way of being, a lifestyle, a daily practice that engages the body, the soul, and deep intelligence. Everything you do here is study, practice, meditation in action. The teachings you receive unfold around 5 fundamental axes. These are not academic subjects, but paths of deepening. Each one is a universe, a path of awakening, a key to better understanding life. Yoga, martial arts, and the body-mind traditions. You will be introduced to the disciplines of yoga, Tai Chi Chuan, martial arts inspired by the Shaolin schools, and other forms of bodily practice, both ancient and living. The goal is not just mastery of movement, but the union of breath, intention, and gesture. The most advanced will have the opportunity to earn diplomas and eventually to pass on these disciplines. Each movement is a poem, each posture a silent prayer of the body. Permaculture and electroculture. You will learn to cultivate without harming, to nourish the earth without violence. Without chemicals, with love and understanding of cycles, you will explore permaculture and electroculture, which amplifies the natural forces of growth. Gardening, soil observation, lunar cycles, composting, gentle irrigation. These are all gestures that teach humility before nature and the intelligence of cooperating with the living world. Animals, care and well-being. Animals are our companions on the path of evolution. Here, you will learn to care for them with gentleness, precision, and responsibility. Dogs, cats, birds, and others, each being here is entitled to a dignified and peaceful life. You will participate in maintaining their living spaces, in caring for them, and in the subtle understanding of their emotional language. The Forbidden Book and its dissemination. You will be invited to study, edit, publish, translate, illustrate, or visualize the Forbidden Book, a major work of the school that explores the connections between science, spirituality, and human consciousness. Reading, annotating, discussing, recording audio, editing films or documentaries about this book will all be forms of participation. Again, you enter not into a dead knowledge, but into a living work that transforms you as you serve it. The Village of Wisdom. Finally, for those who wish to commit even further to the concrete implementation of everything studied here, there is the project of the Village of Wisdom. It is a life project, an embodied future, a new human-scale society where young and old live together, learning from one another. This place is only open to those who, through their consistency, humility, and courage, will have shown their will to embody what they learn. In addition to these 5 areas, the first days of your stay will invite you to observe and meditate on certain essential films, chosen for the richness of their messages. These works are not here to entertain you, but to open your perceptions, pose questions, and disturb your certainties. The following films will be part of your first studies: Powder, The Green Beautiful, Instinct, Matrix, Dragon's Heart, Collapsing. For each one, you will be invited to make a personal and shared reading, exploring the values, symbols, and teachings hidden within. These films are initiatory mirrors, triggers for awareness. The Spirit Garden is not like other schools. Here, we learn to live differently, to think with the heart, to listen with the soul, to act with integrity. This place is a breath in a troubled world, a land of experimentation, an invisible forge where new beings are tempered. Your presence is a gift, your attention a key, your sincere commitment the only real requirement. Welcome to the circle of study. Move slowly, breathe deeply, and let the old world fall from your shoulders. Chapter 4. Members. Hearing about all that Spirit Garden has to offer, a deeper call may arise. The call to sustainable commitment, to becoming a full member of our living community. This choice is not merely an administrative formality. It is an invitation to responsibility, to conscious brotherhood, and to the co-creation of a more just world. To become a member, you must first be welcomed and elected by the absolute majority of the current members of the association. This requires a period of mutual knowledge, during which we learn to feel your presence, your spirit, and your way of being in service to this place, its human and non-human inhabitants. If harmony arises, if trust is woven, you will then be invited to join this more intimate and committed circle. Being a member means that the school becomes your home. It is no longer a place you pass through, but an anchor, a space that you serve with consistency. As a member, you have the following duties. Continue your studies at no cost with humility and rigor. Offer a voluntary financial contribution in the form of donations according to your possibilities. This is not a fee, but a gesture of love and support so that the place may continue to exist. Be ready to work beyond normal hours if the situation demands it. Emergency, collective mission, unforeseen circumstances. A member does not watch the clock when the house needs them. They respond with courage and flexibility. You are no longer a guest, nor even a student. You are the guardian of the house, the servant of the place, brother or sister to those who share its responsibility. The responsibilities are great, but the blessings are as well. As a member, you enter into an expanded dimension of the community. You participate in the election of new members. You are involved in important decisions, projects, purchases, educational or spiritual directions. You can invest in our humanitarian efforts, particularly in Africa, but also in other countries where solidarity projects are developing. You are invited to care for animals, dogs, cats, other sensitive beings, to adopt them and to support their well-being. You can join the Village of Wisdom project, particularly through the rental and management of a larger space dedicated to this intergenerational vision of harmony and learning. You can participate in mission or renewal trips, in a spirit of service or simply for inner regeneration. Finally, you will have access to our different homes in France or Egypt, which will then also be yours, in respect of the spirit of the place. However, access to these spaces of freedom, cohabitation and sharing is based on a fundamental principle that we call the accumulation of positive acts. This simple yet powerful protocol will be detailed in the following chapter. It constitutes the invisible thread of our community, a way to recognize merit, generosity and consistency without hierarchy but with discernment. By becoming a member, you do not sign a contract. You enter into an alliance of souls. You silently promise to take care of what you love, and this place, in turn, will take care of you. Chapter 5. Positive Acts. In our community, we have chosen to replace money with a more just, more living, and higher principle, that of positive acts. Rather than an exchange of money, we value the impulses of the heart, the consistency of effort, shared intelligence, and help offered without expectation. Each sincere action, every authentic gesture, every fertile idea can be recognized by the community and result in a positive act. This is our way of saying, we have seen what you've done, and we honor it. Regularly, a committee of positive acts meets about every 2 weeks in a spirit of discernment and gratitude. All members may attend except the person concerned, to preserve the neutrality of the gaze on their actions. Each action is evaluated, discussed, and gives rise by majority to the attribution of a certain number of positive acts. A simple act, occasional help, faithful presence, good idea implemented. One positive act, an important act, precious help, strong commitment, significant contribution. 2 to 4 positive acts. An exceptional act, generous donation, remarkable courage, noteworthy initiative. Up to 5 positive acts or more in rare and exceptional cases. This is not a fixed scale, but a collective intelligence reflex, where each person learns to see the good in others and to recognize it with fairness. The following are considered: commitment to work, financial support, according to each person's possibilities, ability to inspire, generosity, consistency, kindness, active and joyful participation in the life of the place, innovation and creativity in the service of all. Positive acts accumulate over time. They do not fade. They form a luminous trace of your commitment in the living fabric of our school, and they serve as a primary reference in many situations. When spots are limited for exceptional activities, workshops on a sailboat in the Caribbean, trips to Egypt, inner retreats, humanitarian missions, those with the most positive acts will be called first. If someone cannot or does not wish to participate, the invitation will then go down the hierarchy of positive acts until the group is formed. Access to certain communal houses or to coordinating roles also follows this simple and fair logic. Positive acts thus become the collective memory of trust, a reservoir of recognition, a non-commercial but powerful value, reflecting the quality of your presence. When you pass a degree or Q in your study path, you automatically receive positive acts depending on the level of the degree reached. The further you progress on the path, the greater your responsibility, the more your light shines, and this is naturally honored by the community. Q and positive acts are thus 2 parallel movements. One reflects your inner journey, the other reflects your external involvement. Together, they draw the subtle portrait of your presence in the group. Positive acts are not rewards. They are visible echoes of an invisible presence. They are not a ranking. They are a reciprocal offering, an embodied thank you, a gentle form of justice. For here, we believe that the selfless gift deserves to be seen, recognized, and encouraged, and that those who give the most should one day be able to receive fully, without shame, without pride, but in the clarity of the bond woven. Chapter 6. The Rights and Duties of an Active Member. Being a member of our community is not simply about having access to a place. It is about taking root in a vision, in a family of souls, in a project of consciousness. It is about moving away from the logic of passing through and entering into the one of lasting presence, of living vigilance, of shared awakening. As a positive member, you are called to protect the heart of the place. Unlike volunteers or students who are often here temporarily, you are committed for the long term. As such, you have a reasonable and benevolent right of authority over them. This means you may give instructions, reminders, or respectful orders. You ensure the coherence of the place, respect for the rules, and the maintenance of the sacred atmosphere. You are the active guardian of what others might neglect, a precious silence, the cleanliness of the place, the care of an animal, a presence during a ritual. Your authority is never exercised through contempt or power. It is exercised through service, exemplarity, and love for the common good. When the community functions well, when there are enough volunteers and students to ensure the daily tasks, you no longer have the obligation to work. You can then do absolutely nothing, if that feels right. Offer a few minutes of your time in a free gesture. Or, on the contrary, fully commit to a project that inspires you. The work of the member is no longer an obligation, but an art of living. Every task becomes a joyful offering, every action a way to grow, to experiment, to love more deeply. And it is within this freedom that the most beautiful initiatives and the most precious ideas are born. As a member, you have the right to propose new activities, workshops, and meetings. Imagine projects for the benefit of the community. Design new spaces, methods, and tools. Contribute to the constant evolution of the place in value, beauty, comfort, and depth. Here, we do not want things to remain static. We want to grow, to awaken, to expand the circle. This place is not just a spiritual school. It is also a place of preparation, for we are not blind. The outside world is cracking, the dominant system is collapsing, and a profound, brutal, inevitable crisis is silently preparing, a crisis of society, meaning, and survival. We do not deny it, we do not flee from it, we prepare. Together, we are learning to live without dependence on the system, grow our own food, heal using natural methods, protect the most vulnerable, train minds and bodies for resilience, and love stronger than fear. This is what it means to be a member, to participate in a living arc, a space where one becomes useful, free and ready for the unexpected, ready for the storm, ready to protect the light when the shadow falls. You are at home here, but this is not a right, it is a promise. The promise to act, to love, to pass on. And if you choose this path, then welcome among those who watch and build. If you come here, come with a clear heart, a ready body, and an open mind. This place is not for everyone, but it is made for those who seek without noise, who serve without expectation, and who stand tall in the wind. Welcome to the Spirit Garden. Chapter 7. Meeting the Spiritual Path with Iji. There are paths one must walk alone, and others where one is guided by a higher light, a deeper gaze, a hand extended by one who already knows the stones upon which you might stumble. The story of Iji is the story of a student becoming a master, of a disciple who, after so many trials, revelations, and inner upheavals, must now carry within himself the essence of wisdom and pass it on. But what does this truly mean? To become a master is not to possess, to dominate, or to control. It is to illuminate without blinding, to guide without binding, to open doors, and to allow others to choose whether to step through them. And for the one receiving the teaching, it is not merely the accumulation of knowledge, but a path of inner transformation. To learn is to unlearn. One must unlearn the limits imposed by society, the conditioning of education, and the fears instilled in us as absolute truths. One must unlearn the masks we've grown used to wearing in order to be accepted, to be loved, to avoid causing discomfort. This is what Carl Jung taught with his work on the persona, the shadow, and individuation, that we often live confined within a limited version of ourselves, playing a role we believe is necessary to exist in the eyes of others. But until we discover our true essence, until we make peace with our shadow and reach the authentic self, we are merely fragments of who we could be. Iji's teaching is not limited to intellectual transmission. It is psychology, meditation, mastery of body and mind. It is an invitation to dive within, to shatter illusions, to rebuild a vibrant and conscious presence. It is a journey without condescension, without dogma, without submission. It is a path of strength, of greatness, of freedom. One who chooses this path must smile at their own flaws, learn with humility and pride, and honor each step forward as a victory, because to learn is to be reborn. It is to free oneself from the past, to welcome renewal with trust, and to glory not in who one was, but in who one is becoming. The text that follows is an open doorway to this evolution, a call to momentum, to transcendence, to elevation. Let your soul resonate with it. Let your strength awaken through it. And may this path be the most thrilling and luminous adventure you have ever undertaken.
Chapter 8. Sample. Chapter 1. Part 2 of Iji's exam with his master. After a deep, meaningful silence, the master spoke again.
Now, Iji, let's talk more about your work. You had another subject to study, didn't you? Tell me, what have you discovered?
I smiled. I really enjoyed my research on the next subject. Yes, master, I am ready to present my work on Carl Jung's psychology, as you requested.
I'm listening, Iji. Tell me what you have understood.
Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who profoundly influenced modern psychology by developing several fundamental concepts, including the persona, the shadow, the process of individuation, and the collective unconscious. Originally a disciple of Freud, Jung distanced himself from Freudian psychoanalysis due to their differing views on the nature of the unconscious. Unlike Freud, who saw the unconscious primarily as a reservoir of repressed instincts, Jung believed it also contained fundamental structures inherited from humanity, the collective unconscious, as well as unexplored creative forces. His major work, Psychological Types, explores the mechanisms of the human psyche and distinguishes various archetypes that shape our unconscious. Among them, two concepts are essential to our discussion: the persona and the shadow. Jung defines the persona as the social mask we wear to interact with others. It is the facade we present to the world, an adaptation necessary for functioning within society. Jung said, "The persona is what someone is not in reality, but what they and others think they are." The persona is shaped from childhood through education, culture, and social environment. The more an individual conforms to societal expectations, the stronger their persona becomes. However, excessive identification with this persona presents a danger. the loss of one's true self. By believing oneself to be solely this mask, a person becomes disconnected from their authentic nature and deepest desires. In a strict or repressive educational environment, the persona can become a rigid prison, preventing spontaneity and creativity. The person lives in a false identity, adapted to external expectations, but disconnected from their true self. Understanding and mastering the persona is crucial so that it serves as a tool for social interaction rather than a psychological prison. The shadow represents everything that is repressed within the personal unconscious: unspoken desires, forbidden impulses, unresolved traumas, but also unexploited talents and hidden aspirations. Jung said, "The shadow is everything that the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves and projects onto others." The shadow is often associated with evil, aggression, and destructive impulses. However, this view is reductive. The shadow also contains forces of creativity and potential for growth. By rejecting the shadow, a person amputates parts of their personality, leading to frustration and neuroses. When the shadow is denied or repressed, it inevitably resurfaces in the form of uncontrolled behaviors, like sudden anger, jealousy, inexplicable impulses, or projections onto others, like attributing to someone else what one refuses to see in oneself. Repressed emotions do not disappear. They accumulate in the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. Modern neuroscience has demonstrated that these emotional tensions can directly impact the body. The liver and pancreas are affected by stress and unexpressed emotions. The pancreas is particularly vulnerable, potentially explaining the onset of certain types of diabetes, type 1 or 2, in individuals who have experienced intense emotional shocks. The sympathetic nervous system remains in a constant state of alert due to repressed stress, leading to hormonal imbalances and chronic inflammatory diseases. And cortisol, the stress hormone, in excess weakens the immune system, disrupts metabolism, and accelerates cellular aging. Thus, accepting and integrating the shadow not only promotes psychological evolution, but also physiological balance. Individuation is the process by which an individual becomes fully themselves by integrating all aspects of their psyche, including their shadow. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The ultimate goal of individuation is to access the self, the totality of one's being, beyond social conditioning and masks. This process involves several steps. First, recognizing the persona and understanding that it is a social tool, not one's true identity. Then facing the shadow and identifying fears, repressed desires, unspoken anger, and hidden talents. Afterwards, breaking free from the collective unconscious commands. No longer conforming automatically to societal expectations, but freely choosing one's own values. And at the end, unifying all parts of oneself and accepting both the light and dark aspects of oneself and transforming weaknesses into strengths. Another key Jungian concept, the collective unconscious, is a repository of archetypal images inherited from humanity. It subtly yet powerfully influences our behaviors. For example, archetypes such as the hero, the sage, the shadow, the anima, and the animus shape our perception of the world and ourselves. However, the collective unconscious can also be a burden. When a society values only certain traits, like strength, rationality, and conformity, while rejecting others like sensitivity, spontaneity, and intuition, it creates individuals disconnected from themselves. Liberation comes through awareness of these conditionings and reclaiming one's true identity. So in conclusion, integrating the shadow is essential for overcoming inner conflicts and attaining psychological and physical balance. Because ignoring the shadow can lead to stress, illness, and self-destructive behaviors, while embracing the shadow restores inner peace, improves health, and enhances interactions with the world without fear or masks. Recognizing the shadow is therefore a path to healing. By confronting what we repress, we break free from automatic behaviors and become fully responsible for our destiny. There was a moment of silence after I stopped speaking.
Very interesting, E.G. But before we move forward, I would like to explore some key points with you. Your presentation on Carl Jung's work was impressive. However, there are still points I would like to clarify with you. Listen carefully to my first question. If a being has not yet reached their true self, when they speak of free will, are they truly expressing their own will, or merely the unconscious programming imposed by their persona and social and educational conditioning?
Master, the answer becomes evident when we understand the mechanisms of human conditioning. The average individual believes they are free, but in reality, their free will is often an illusion. Jung explained that the persona is the social mask we adopt to be accepted. From childhood, we are programmed through education, cultural norms, and family expectations. Thus, what we call free will is often a series of predetermined choices shaped by our environment and past experiences. This phenomenon has been extensively studied in cognitive psychology. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel laureate in economics and psychologist, demonstrated that 90% of our decisions are dictated by unconscious heuristics, cognitive shortcuts inherited from our past and culture. In this state, the individual is not truly choosing. They are reacting according to pre-programmed patterns. As long as they have not reached their true self, meaning they have not consciously integrated their shadow and conditioning, they merely reproduce the beliefs and expectations of society. To genuinely exercise authentic free will, one must first break these invisible chains by bringing the unconscious to light. Jung stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Thus, Master, most people do not possess real free will. They believe they are the masters of their destiny, yet they are prisoners of a script written by their upbringing and the collective unconscious. Only individuation allows one to break free.
Well said, E.G. You have understood that the illusion of free will is a consequence of conditioning. But let us go further. If we must harmonize the shadow and the light within us, should we accept being guided by the shadow and manifesting our negativity, or should we rather understand our shadow in order to pacify, master, and transform it into the light?
I was waiting for this question, as I knew it is a core concept in Carl Jung's work that is often misunderstood. Master, this question touches the very core of inner work. The shadow is not to be denied, but neither should it be followed blindly. If we allow ourselves to be guided by raw shadows, we fall into anger, jealousy, violence, and destructive instincts. This is what Jung called identification with the shadow. It happens when someone gives in to their repressed impulses without discernment, becoming a slave to their instincts. Conversely, ignoring the shadow, as you have pointed out in your teaching, only gives it more power. The more we repress it, the stronger it grows in our unconscious until it manifests as neuroses, anxieties, or self-sabotage. Balance lies in the transmutation of the shadow into light. This is an inner alchemical process where we recognize our impulses, fears, and wounds, then consciously integrate them so they become a creative force serving our spiritual evolution. For example, a person who represses their anger will see it explode uncontrollably. But if they learn to observe and understand it, they can transform that energy into determination, assertiveness, and constructive strength. This is the principle of solve et coagula used by alchemists. Dissolve, solve, illusions and conditioning. Recompose, coagula, a new version of oneself, more harmonious and aware. Thus, the path is neither to suppress the shadow nor to let it dominate. It is to sublimate it, like an artist who transforms pain into a masterpiece, or a warrior who channels their instinct for combat into discipline and wisdom. Jung stated, "The encounter with oneself means first the encounter with one's own shadow. Only by facing our own darkness can we achieve true light, rather than a superficial mask of artificial holiness."
An excellent response, E.G. Now, let us explore another point. Do you think Jungian therapy and spiritual research are opposed, or are they complementary?
Master, they are not only complementary, but inseparable when properly understood. Jungian psychology is a gateway to self-knowledge. It allows us to analyze archetypes, explore the shadow, and understand our mental mechanisms, but it is not limited to the psychological domain. Jung himself explored spirituality, delving into Eastern traditions, Buddhism, alchemy, and Gnostic texts. Spirituality, on the other hand, seeks the elevation of the soul and connection to the divine. But if practiced without psychological introspection, it can become an escape, a spiritual bypass where one avoids facing their wounds under the pretense of seeking light. Jung was clear on this. Every true spiritual experience must first be grounded in self-knowledge. The teachings of yoga, Taoism, and Buddhism emphasize this integration as well. In Raja Yoga, spiritual elevation requires mastering the mind and understanding internal blockages. In Zen, enlightenment
Satori.
cannot be attained without sincere self-examination. Thus, Jungian psychology prepares the ground for spirituality, and spirituality extends beyond psychology's limits. They are not opposed, but complementary. A famous quote from Jung illustrates this beautifully. "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." So, Master, there is no separation between these two paths. Jungian psychology clears illusions, and spirituality guides toward the ultimate realization of being. The Master's voice sounded proud and approving.
I see that you have grasped the essence of this teaching, E.G. You have worked well, and your responses show a growing maturity in your reasoning. I see that you are progressing rapidly in your understanding of the deep self and individuation. But before we move on to another domain, I have one last question for you. Since most humans are completely unaware of their shadow and live confined within their persona, and since, as we have seen, this persona constitutes 90% of their daily life, tell me, do people truly perceive and analyze the information spread by the media, often biased, sometimes manipulated, with discernment? Can an ordinary individual trapped within their persona and the collective unconscious genuinely express free will and make an intelligent choice when faced with the constant influx of information? Or are these choices merely echoes of the persona, an instinctive and conformist adherence to the dogmas imposed by the media and power structures? Shouldn't a human being engaged in the quest for their true self learn to analyze all this information, to filter it, to question its nature, rather than simply absorbing whatever is presented to them? Only those who have attained inner freedom are capable of viewing these information flows with clarity and forming their own judgments. The others merely resonate mechanically with what reinforces their persona, never daring to scratch the surface of the image they have built of themselves. As we have seen with Jung, he who looks outside dreams. He who listens to the outside world's dreams. He who listens within, who looks within himself, awakens. What do you have to say on this subject, E.G.?
Master, this question is fundamental because it touches on the greatest tool of manipulation in our modern era, the shaping of beliefs through information. A human being who is unaware of their shadow and persona lives in a mental cage without even seeing its bars. They believe they are free, simply because they have never been taught to question their own thoughts. But in reality, they have never exercised true discernment. They are merely the product of what has been instilled in them. Thus, free will, as commonly understood, is an illusion for most people. What they call choice is nothing more than a Pavlovian reflex, a deep conditioning aligned with their persona. The media exploit this with frightening precision. Behavioral psychologists like Edward Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, demonstrated that the masses do not seek the truth, but the confirmation of what they already believe. He held a knowledge that allowed him to push the American women to smoke, to make the population believe that their breakfast of ever was the one that he imposed, and to manipulate the Americans to forget what was their real breakfast. And pushed America into different wars, the complete pseudo-acceptation of the population, under complete manipulation, believed that it was their free will to go to die in a war, or even worse, to send their kids to die in a useless war. Bernays was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who was a complete manipulator. If we put back the prices of his sessions with a client into today's value, 1 hour with Sigmund Freud was €350. His clients had to pay cash, not to hide from the taxes, but officially for the complete commitment of the client. But not Freud's complete commitment to pay his taxes. We discovered later that 95% of Freud's files were about fake clients. It is called a manipulation or a fake advertisement. And Bernays applied all of this because he had a very inspired diabolic mentor. The same idea was used by Adolf Hitler, who understood the power of manipulation that we can have through psychology, and he organized an army of psychologists to manipulate the Germans to do everything they did during the war. To great power comes great responsibility. Bernays saw only the great power and looked at the population as if it were only a group of slaves that we could use without any respect. Instead of using the whip, he used the manipulation, and that is much worse. Because you are furious against the flogger, while you agree with the manipulator because you are manipulated. With Bernays came the beginning of the deep state of America, and this deep state started to invade the complete world. There is a psychology of responsibility where you know that deep knowledge can bring freedom and revelation to humanity. A person trapped in their persona does not objectively analyze information. They instinctively filter it based on what reinforces their social identity, culture, and group affiliation. If they were to question an idea they have always held to be true, it would cause cognitive dissonance. And the average human being will do anything to avoid cognitive dissonance because it threatens their psychological equilibrium. Thus, most people do not seek truth, but validation of their existing beliefs. They instinctively reject any information that challenges their persona and, by extension, their belonging to a social group. If we examine the work of Noam Chomsky, he explains how the media do not present an objective reality, but a framework of perception. They do not tell people what to think, but how to think. A simple example. If a media outlet wants to influence public opinion on a geopolitical conflict, it will not explicitly state, "This country is good, this one is bad." Instead, it will subtly guide emotions by choosing which images to show, what words to use, and what tone to adopt. The audience, believing they are analyzing facts objectively, will actually be steered toward the desired conclusion. The famous Milgram experiment showed that 65% of people obey authority figures blindly, even when it leads them to commit immoral acts. This principle applies to the media as well. They are perceived as intellectual authority figures. Thus, a person trapped in their persona does not question what they hear. They accept it as truth simply because it comes from a source they perceive as legitimate. Master, true awakening comes from deconstructing these automatisms. If one truly wishes to exercise authentic free will, one must unlearn before learning. Here are the essential steps for a human being to regain their discernment. First, understand the persona and the shadow. Realize that not all thoughts are our own, but often conditioned reflexes. Analyze the source of every piece of information. Who is speaking? Why? In whose interest? Learn to distinguish facts from interpretations. A single news story can be presented in completely different ways depending on the chosen angle. And most importantly, develop critical thinking. Read multiple contradictory sources and confront differing opinions. Listen to intuition and direct experience. Step outside theoretical frameworks and observe reality firsthand. Thus, only those who undertake deep inner work can avoid reacting mechanically to media stimuli. It is not the information itself that is dangerous, but the way it is used to shape perception and keep the masses unconscious. This is why the Jung quote you reminded me of, Master, is so powerful. He who looks outside dreams. He who listens to the outside world's dreams. He who listens within, who looks within himself, awakens. For only an awakened individual can see beyond the illusions of the world and thus no longer be manipulated. As I paused, I felt overwhelmed. Putting everything together like this led me to a deep understanding.
You have understood well, Iggy. Awakening is not merely an inner quest. It is also a constant vigilance against the illusions of the external world.
Note of the author. This fantastic conversation happened around 30 years ago. Now, in 2025, look at the presentations. The bad Russians invaded the poor Ukraine, that is led by Zelensky, who is the new Churchill. The irresponsible, dark, violent people refused the vaccinations sentencing the old people of their families to die. Europe, the continent of democracy and freedom, will fight with courage and dignity the bad Russians. Drink Coca-Cola, go to eat in the fast food, and America is the greatest country in the world. In addition, Superman is American. Chapter 9, Sample. Chapter 2, Part 3 of Iggy's exam with his master.
Iggy, we have explored Carl Jung's work on the persona, the shadow, and individuation. We have seen how most human beings ignore their unconscious and live in an illusion of free will, dominated by social conditioning and psychological automatisms. But today, I want you to present a report also on a deeper question. What is, in your view, the relationship between pranayama, the Brahma Dwara, the nasal cavity, the gateway of consciousness, emotional memory, and the work on the shadow according to Carl Jung? How can the union of breathwork and analytical psychology truly allow us to explore our unconscious and reach the true self? Give me a complete and detailed analysis of this complementarity.
I took a moment to think before answering. Master, your question is profound and urges me to connect two disciplines that many believe to be separate: psychology and the energetic work of yoga. Pranayama, which is the mastery of breath, and the work on the olfactory pathway through the Brahma Dwara are actually powerful tools for reaching the deepest layers of our unconscious, where what Jung calls the shadow resides. We know, Master, that Brahma Dwara is a fundamental point in Tantric Yoga and Swara Yoga because it represents the doorway of consciousness. It is directly linked to the olfactory nerve, which is one of the oldest circuits of the brain, connecting the nasal area to the limbic system, the center of emotions and memory. From a neurobiological perspective, smells have a unique impact on emotional memory because they are processed by the olfactory bulb, which is connected to the amygdala, which manages emotions and repressed fears, and the hippocampus, which stores long-term memories. This is why certain scents instantly awaken buried memories, often accompanied by intense emotions. A simple smell can bring back a forgotten trauma, a long-lost sensation, or an emotion deeply rooted in the unconscious. Thus, by working on pranayama and activating the Brahma Dwara, we can reactivate buried memories without passing through rational thought, which is essential for accessing the shadow and understanding what is blocking us. Jung explained that the shadow contains not only our repressed traumas, but also our undeveloped potential. But what prevents us from seeing our shadow? Two major factors: emotional blockages related to the past, which prevent the unconscious from surfacing, and the incessant activity of the mind, which distracts our attention and prevents us from receiving messages from our inner world. This is where pranayama becomes a key tool. Slowing down the breath with precise cycles, such as 8 to 32 to 16, activates the parasympathetic nervous system and reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logical reasoning. This slowing down creates access to alpha and theta brain waves, which are the same states found in deep meditation and lucid dreams. The activation of Brahma Dwara synchronizes breathing with emotional memory zones, allowing progressive access to the unconscious. Thus, a conscious pranayama practice, combined with inner observation, enables access to repressed memories and unconscious patterns, just like a Jungian psychoanalysis, but in a direct, non-verbal way. Master, we have also seen that in pranayama, we use nadi shodhana, alternate nostril breathing, which involves closing the nostrils alternately with the thumb and ring finger of the right hand. Each nostril corresponds to a major nadi, energy channel. Ida, the left nostril, is linked to the right brain, emotions, and the unconscious, while Pingala, the right nostril, is linked to the left brain, logic, and the rational mind. By balancing these two respiratory flows, we balance the right and left brain hemispheres, allowing us to be fully aware between rational and intuitive, conscious and unconscious. This is exactly what Jung called individuation. The path to the true self involves integrating opposites. Thus, pranayama becomes a bridge between the shadow and the light, bringing what was hidden to the surface, but without being overwhelmed by it. Jung warned, "The shadow that is not integrated ends up possessing us." But by using the breath, we can control this emergence, observe our shadow without identifying with it, and thus transform it into a positive force. In summary, the Brahma Dwara acts as a gateway to the unconscious because it is connected to the limbic system and emotional memory. Pranayama slows down mental activity and opens access to repressed memories, allowing us to confront the shadow without judgment. Alternate nostril breathing balances both brain hemispheres, creating harmony between rational and intuitive aspects and facilitating Jung's individuation process. Individuation requires facing and integrating the shadow, and yoga is a direct tool for making this process fluid and accessible, without relying solely on verbalization. Thus, Jung's quest and the yogic quest are not opposed, but complementary. Where psychoanalysis uses words to access the unconscious, pranayama uses breath. Where Jung called for integrating the shadow, yoga calls for transcending energetic blockages to reach the self. By combining these two approaches, we create a complete path to inner awakening and the liberation from unconscious conditioning. The master seems to be pleased.
E.g., your report is precise and profound. You have clearly grasped the union between breathwork and the exploration of the unconscious. Pranayama is a key that allows us to gently open the doors of the shadow without being overwhelmed by it. It is a tool of unparalleled power for transforming fear into light. We will continue our exploration. But before that, I have a new question for you. We have spoken about pranayama and Jungian individuation. But there is an essential question that many spiritual seekers fail to understand. Why do they seek suffering in spirituality? Why do they believe that spiritual elevation must necessarily pass through the harshest asceticism, through pain, through the denial of all sweetness in life? The deepest teachings, whether from yoga, Taoism, Buddhism, or even early Christianity, speak of Amrita, the nectar of immortality, the quintessence of a blissful life. Spirituality is not meant to be a punishment. It is, on the contrary, a liberation and an ecstatic joy. Peter Dionov taught this clearly. Only the love of God manifested brings the plenitude of life. Even Carl Jung, in his exploration of Eastern philosophies, delved into the I Ching, Taoism, and the Upanishads, recognizing that the highest spiritual wisdom leads to a state of ecstasy and balance, not perpetual suffering. Tell me, Iji, from both a scientific and spiritual perspective, why do so many human beings confuse spiritual ascension with suffering? Why do they struggle so much to accept Amrita, the sweetness of life? And how can we explain this to our brothers and sisters who seek the light but get lost in the mistaken belief that pain is the only path?
Master, your question is essential because it touches on the very paradox of human nature in the spiritual quest. The idea that suffering is the only path to spiritual elevation is a deeply ingrained psychological and cultural construct built upon several factors. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, we find a strong association between suffering and purification. For example, the concept of original sin, that humanity is believed to be born guilty and can only access the divine through penance and atonement. The glorification of martyrs, that those who suffer the most are considered the most worthy in the eyes of God. And the idea of earning merit through pain, asceticism, and sacrifice is often seen as proof of sincere spiritual commitment. These ideas have deeply marked the Western collective unconscious, leading many spiritual seekers to believe that a path to God is only legitimate if it is filled with hardships and deprivation. But if we turn to Eastern traditions, the perspective is different. In Raja Yoga and Tantra, the spiritual quest is not seen as a path of suffering, but rather as a path of transformation and sacred enjoyment. The concept of Ananda, bliss, the ultimate state of self-realization, is a state of ecstatic joy, not deprivation. The path of Bhakti Yoga and divine love emphasizes devotion and union with the divine through love and bliss, not through suffering. Tantra and the sublimation of pleasure tell us that vital energy and life's pleasures are not obstacles, but tools for ascending to higher consciousness. Thus, true transcendence is not found in suffering, but in the harmonious alignment of all dimensions of being: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. From a psychological and neuroscientific standpoint, several elements explain why people still often associate suffering with elevation. When a person imposes deprivation and suffering upon themselves, their brain tries to justify these efforts by sublimating them. Thus, they may convince themselves that the more they suffer, the closer they are to the divine. This is a defense mechanism studied in psychology, the rationalization of pain to avoid admitting that it might be unnecessary. If someone grows up in an environment where effort and pain are valued, they will have difficulty accepting that a simpler, more joyful path might exist. This is why many people unconsciously recreate suffering in their spiritual journey, because they associate difficulty with legitimacy. The human body, when subjected to prolonged suffering, releases endorphins to compensate. This release can create an unconscious addiction to pain, giving the illusion that it is necessary to achieve a heightened state of consciousness. This phenomenon has been widely studied in neuroscience, especially in behaviors related to masochism and self-punishment rituals. Master, we must teach that spirituality is a path of liberation, not restriction. Amrita, in Sanskrit, means the nectar of immortality. It represents the essence of life, the sweetness and ecstasy of awakened existence. This sweetness is not an attachment to material pleasure, but rather a recognition of divine beauty in every moment of life. Thus, those who impose unnecessary suffering on themselves must understand that true spiritual ascension is not about depriving oneself of happiness, but about purifying, sublimating, and offering it as a sacred act.
Iggy, your answer is correct and profound. Too many souls get lost in suffering and confuse discipline with self-flagellation. Amrita is the true path. Enlightenment is not found in deprivation, but in plenitude.
Chapter 10. Notes on Amrita. Here in our school, Amrita is not just an ancient myth or a veiled metaphor. It is a real, tangible, living quest. It is the nectar of life, sown into every cell, in every breath, in every mastered movement. And this nectar does not flow by chance. It springs forth from deep commitment, embodied discipline, and powerful joy. It manifests in the body, in the breath, and in the unified spirit. We forge the body like a sword, sharp, pure, without unnecessary fat, without distraction. We practice Shaolin martial arts with intensity, no folklore, fire, sweat, precise movements, jumps, strikes, balances, deep postures that defy gravity. We don't pretend to be strong, we become strong. Slowly, solidly, with pride and determination. But we also know that the sword needs a soft scabbard. We practice Tai Chi Chuan, the true art, not a watered-down or commercialized version, but a deep, martial, traditional Tai Chi Chuan, rooted in the ancient lineage of the masters. Each gesture is a wave, each breath a bridge between heaven and earth. There, in slowness, we find strength. In silence, we meet the invisible. And so the body may integrate this duality, the tension of combat and the fluidity of breath. We offer oil massages, precise and conscious wellness treatments aimed at regeneration. Massage here is neither luxury nor entertainment. It is a science of touch, a way to awaken the skin, muscles, and organs to a higher consciousness. We touch to heal, to harmonize, to anchor the soul in the body. Each practice is a bridge toward total well-being, a path between rigor and gentleness, between effort and enjoyment. Here, suffering is not a virtue. We do not seek sadomasochistic pain in the name of growth. Number, we grow in the intensity of pleasure, a sacred pleasure, a pleasure that flows through the body, elevates the soul, sharpens the mind, a pleasure that leads to Amrita, the nectar of immortality, that is, eternity felt in the present moment, when body, soul, and spirit are finally in harmony. We invite those who are looking for an authentic path, a complete path where the beauty of the body is married to the depth of the soul, to come join us. Come sweat, breathe, dance, fight, and relax. Come taste what is real. Come drink from the source. Amrita is waiting for you.
Chapter 11. Conclusion. You have now received a sincere and profound glimpse into what we live, study, and transmit at the Spirit Garden. You have heard about the different positions available: volunteer, student, member, as well as the philosophical, psychological, physical, and spiritual foundations that form the bedrock of our school. The thought of Carl Jung, work on pranayama, yoga, traditional martial arts, and a holistic approach to knowledge. You now have a clearer vision of how we function and our state of mind. All that remains is to take the decisive step, the step of contact. If the impulse is there, if the message has resonated within you, if you feel drawn to this path, then do not hesitate to reach out to us. Simply state the position that inspires you, and we will guide you step by step to apply, to understand the administrative procedures, to prepare for your arrival, or simply to begin a kind exchange before perhaps welcoming you here, to this place far from the noise of the world, where study becomes wisdom, where practice becomes art, where community becomes family. Whether for a few days, several months, or a life journey, our home will be open to you if your heart is sincere. Thank you for your attention, your listening, and your curiosity. And perhaps we will meet soon under the trees of the Spirit Garden.
Here we come, empty hands to take back our lives. Here we come, lovers and friends, and we do know the price. We've been victims far too long, trapped in blindness and fright. Yes, we know where we're coming from. Here we come now to turn that back to light. We will be standing by your side until the harm is undone. We will be standing filled with pride, with our faces turned towards the sun, as one. Here we come, burning hearts, guided fire, wise control. Here we come. We don't believe, for we know, oh yes, we know. Decades of darkness, still we can see the light. For we know it belongs to us, to every woman, every man, and every We will be standing by your side until the harm is undone. We will be standing filled with pride, with our faces turned towards the sun. We are one. Everything rattles, everything roars. There is never peace between the wars. Meanness can win, for he is never late, while the knights have misplaced their keys by mistake. The kids want to run, but their fathers never dared. And today, words like justice, they sound so absurd. Did you ever wonder why the beauty of dignity has left this world? Our hands can open, our hands can close, but our eyes will stay open wide. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. We need to see through all the lies. They want us to believe that there is only fair. But if we light a single flame, then darkness is obliged to disappear. We will be standing by your side until the harm is undone. We will be standing filled with pride, with our faces turned towards the sun. We are one.